underestimate the power of PlayStation.
Beyond.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Beyond, episode 329. A very special episode of Podcast Beyond, episode 329. This is The Last of Us Left Behind spoiler cast. Do not listen to this episode until you have beaten Left Behind. Otherwise, you're going to be pissed. Everything's going to be ruined for you. As always, I'm one of your hosts, Greg Miller, alongside the Pride of Long Island, Colin Moriarty.
Hello, Greg.
And then, who else is in the room here?
Well, we have Neil and Bruce from Naughty Dog, the minds, the visionaries behind The Last of Us.
Oh, they made the whole game.
They made the whole game by
two
themselves.
hands.
Good.
You know when Ballard was here and he was pretending like he worked a little bit on The Last of Us? Well, he was full of shit.
David
Ballard. They did
Ballard.
it by themselves.
He's an empty husk of
Everything you're saying is true.
Yeah. So now again, this is the spoiler cast. This is your last chance to stop listening, ladies and gentlemen, or watching and
Go
leave.
play it. Don't listen.
Don't
listen to this podcast. No.
You guys really worked really hard on that. So that was it. Now we can start talking about it. Let me be the first to congratulate you both on ripping off Gone Home. Whoa, the indie darling Gone Home.
Nice.
They can't have anything for themselves. You've got to swoop in and steal it. No,
It's funny. We met Steve Gaynor at PAX, and we had lunch with him. And afterwards, I told him, I was like, after this DLC comes out, people are going to accuse us that we ripped you off. It's going to come.
So let's
You
start with
turned that
that.
around real quick, by the way.
I think the Ellie Riley moment, probably Colin literally screamed from his room, "Are you kidding me?" Totally caught off guard by it. I noticed that there was something going on there, right? But the photo booth is what cemented everything for me. When I got in there, like, knee-jerk action. What am I going to pick? I'm going to pick love. And I'm like, oh, yeah, they love each other. Oh, my God, they love each other. And then at the very end, like, they have that really awkward moment of, like, well, all right, let's leave. And it was like, oh, man, they are so in love with each other. It was so awesome. I loved it. Great job.
Thanks.
Cool. Yeah. We just wanted to tell a different kind of story, a different kind of love story than we've done, like, with the main campaign.
So did you know that thread when you were working on the real game and the meaty core of the game?
It kind of like the thoughts came in and out, and, you know, we felt like we didn't really have to explore in the main campaign, so we just left it out. And with Left Behind, with that story, again, we wanted to see another side of Ellie, and that's where the story went.
Yeah.
A lot of it was also like, you know, we saw Joel in the single player campaign and his ordinary world, you know, with Sarah. And so we wanted to take that same aspect of like, okay, well, what is Ellie's ordinary world like? We've heard about the QZ and her life inside of the military reform school, et cetera. So now it's like, okay, well, what does that mean? And
right.
Let's explore that. And Riley's a big part of that. And of course, the American Dreams comics was a big inspiration for this as well. So yeah, it was just an opportunity to explore. Like,
there's little hints
love.
in the comic that you see the way she talks, like she says, "I like her," and like the way she hugs her after they have that. So it's like there's really minor setups in there.
So, see, now I'm always fascinated by this in terms of storytelling across multiple platforms. So Faith Aaron Hicks obviously worked closely. I mean, she made American Dreams, but then closely with you on it. Is that how this works? Or did you guys tell her what needed to happen in it? Or
No, we just, you know, we would brainstorm on the story, and it's funny, we did like a couple of PR interviews, and we both kind of slipped up and said, Ellie's attracted to Riley, and at the time we weren't really thinking about it as a romantic relationship, but that thought kind of stuck in the back, at least the back of my mind. I don't know what she was thinking, so it was kind of just worked into the story there, and then we built off of that in Left Behind.
so did anyone try to stop this at any point? Like, I don't know. I assume you guys are just mad scientists there. You just say where the boat's going, and everybody's like, oh, God. Colin, correct me if I'm wrong. In historical sense, do mad scientists direct boats?
Yeah.
I'm just making sure. All right, there might have been.
I've heard of this in the historic record. Yes.
But was anybody against this? Did they not like this? I know, like.
actually, the biggest conversation was between Neil and I.
Yeah.
I mean, Evan Wells, co-president, dude, whatever, you know.
Dude.
The captain of the ship.
Yeah.
With Christoph.
Mad scientist of the ship.
The mad scientist of the ship.
Thank
He
you.
was, he literally, Neil went in, said, here's the idea. And he's like, yeah, great.
Actually,
Like,
it
as
was
simple-
like
yeah.
we were about to show it to like marketing, and I went into Evan's office like, before we go into marketing, I just want you to be aware of what we shot and what's like happening here. Like, I showed him the thing. He's like, oh yeah, cool, awesome.
That's right.
And just Bruce and I would have a discussion, and we're just like, let's make sure we're doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
Like it's really like really important for the story. The story doesn't work without it, and we really challenged ourselves. It's like it felt imperative for the story.
Yeah, it adds an extra dimension to Ellie's character. It gives weight and depth to the story that we're telling inside of Left Behind. So it was one of those things that, we want to be sensitive to the fans and what the single-player campaign has built up as far as people's expectations, but also we want to tell the stories that we want to tell, and we want to give the experience that we think is like super important to tell about Ellie, and so that's a big part of it.
Ultimately, the story, it's another part of their relationship, but the story is really where Ellie finds her strength. That's where you find the parallel with the other story that, we haven't revealed, the whole Joel thing.
Right.
Is she draws all her strength from her experience with Riley.
Yeah, it was unexpected to go back to Colorado and pick up. I guess I should be expecting the unexpected from you guys, that you guys are just going to screw around with my emotions and where I'm going. But when the game starts and you're back in Colorado, I was like, oh, that's weird. Like, this is awesome that it's filling in that gap, but I was, the two stories basically dueling banjo. I enjoyed.
Yeah, I was wondering, if you guys approached the story in the sense that you knew you wanted to go back and tell that specific kind of interlude that we don't really get to see. We don't really get to see a lot of that winter scene until we're unexpectedly playing as Ellie in the main campaign. And I'm wondering, I like that because it reminds me a lot of, you guys are good at keeping secrets as a studio, right? A lot of studios aren't good at keeping secrets. We always talk about Young Drake in Uncharted 3 or the beginning of The Last of Us, how no one really knew that it started in current day and went from there. So is this, you always knew maybe that you wanted to revisit that and flesh out that part of the story a little bit more?
That was one of so we had the opportunity to do this, the side story, and we're brainstorming what it could be, and we're like, oh, it'd be cool to explore that section because we didn't reveal a lot of it, but it felt like on its own it didn't have a lot of meat to it. And then we're like, oh, what if we explore this Riley thing? Well, that wouldn't have a lot of combat to it. And I was like, okay, well, what if we do the two stories and they'd say something about one another? And that's where, yes, that felt like a story worth telling all of a sudden.
Yeah, I think that was my favorite part. I mean, you talked a little bit about it, that it was getting to know her as just being a girl or whatever. And I didn't, when you read that or you watch, this Ashley Johnson character over here talk about it in a video, you don't really get it. But when we were in the Halloween shop, right, and it's just Ellie and Riley going around trying on masks, and I kept waiting for something to trigger it, but then I kept finding other things to try on and conversations to have. That it was like, that was when it really dawned on me of like, this is just hanging out. Like this part of it is just totally us just being girls, just girling out, seeing what's up.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved that scene in particular. Again, Ellie said something like, people really spent their money on this or something like that. It showed a real detachment, I thought, from the fact that she doesn't know what the real world is. She only has touchstones that she thinks she understands it. Also, the video game scene I thought was really
God,
cool.
Yeah, that was it. You guys did so many different things that weren't, quote unquote, Last of Us.
Okay, so we were talking about this at breakfast this morning. What were your guys' favorite parts of the Ellie Riley? As far as the
kind of fun and games.
The fun and games.
Sure. I mean, the video game part was awesome because it starts and I'm like,
so we got that one right.
This is so weird that they're gonna that it's just gonna be her face, and then the health bars come up, and then I'm cursing because I'm not doing the combos right and all this other stuff. That was awesome.
Yeah. All right, Colin.
I got to go back to the Halloween shop specifically.
Oh, we didn't get that one.
No, well, I was gonna say specifically the ability. I loved the idea of them putting those masks on, and you assumed just at the very beginning when she has the Wolfman mask on or whatever, and you assume that they're okay. You're gonna explore, maybe you find some scissors or some sugar somewhere, and then you leave. But I like the idea of how you find more masks, you don't have to put them on, and then you find the skeleton. We all have the magic 8-ball or whatever, and you shake it, and you can do it. You can do it over and over again.
I liked it. What was it too? Will I ever play a video game and it's grim? She's like, well, fuck you, Skull. I was like, that was awesome.
I really enjoyed that scene because I think that it got down to kind of the nitty-gritty of what I wanted this to be and what I think it was for the most part, which was just an experience that didn't have much combat, that didn't have much in the way of anything but exploring. And I was just that's why The Last of Us took me 17 or 18 hours to beat when it took a lot of other people 14 hours or 12 hours, is because I just loved walking around and looking at everything and finding things. And that, just being able to do that again for 2 or 3 more hours was awesome.
Well, that was the weird thing for me, is that I couldn't shut that off. It's like even when I was back to the Riley thing, the Riley Ellie stuff, and I knew I'm here to have fun, kind of, you know what I mean? I still was like, all right, good, go talk about that. I'm going to go check out this dark corner. What's over here? Is there anything over here? No? Okay. Well, then you're talking about great moments. The pun book was really good, and I loved the escalator bit. Just the little bit of the escalator where they both freak out to be on an escalator.
Cool. Yeah.
What did you predict, though? What was you said?
You were the arcade.
Yeah.
We said water gun fight.
Oh, the water gun fight. The water gun fight was awesome, too.
Yeah.
Actually super tense.
Yeah, I know, right? I'd see her. It's like, you can't aim. You're just shooting.
All right, did you beat her or did you lose?
I lost.
Oh.
I lost the first part, badly.
Okay.
I like where you get hit 5 times, but I beat her.
See, I did the
second
first part fine. Who get the wettest? I got her the wettest. But then
interesting.
after that, I was just getting smoked.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Does the game ending change? Does she not get bitten if I would have?
The whole campaign changed after that.
Yeah. So, what, Colin? What didn't you like about it? You have them here. Nail them.
Yeah, I mean the one
Jerks.
I thought it was really strong. I even liked going back and fighting again in the sense that
Right.
I felt like Ellie feels different than Joel, and we had a little bit of taste of that in the Last of Us' campaign. But I like that, when someone's coming at you in the campaign with Joel, right? You kind of like can stand your ground, right? Like you might like swing at them and be able to, you can't do that with Ellie, and so it makes you kind of be evasive. And I enjoyed that. At the same time, and we discussed this a little bit, I think my one issue with it was maybe did there need to be any combat in it at all? I wondered, and I know like it's a video game and you have to cater to that audience and maybe people would be disappointed in it, but I was so much more riveted with the exploration of it, of them just going to this mall, maybe there's just no one there and like they can just do whatever they wanted. So I like those waves of enemies, and it was actually quite difficult.
Yeah,
the end was actually quite
the
difficult.
only thing I didn't like was the final section when the guys are trying to get through the lock or whatever to get to Joel, right?
Yeah.
And the first time I worked my way down to everybody. When I got there and they shot me at me, I was like, all right, let's go. But then there was like 17 of these motherfuckers everywhere. And it only took me like 3 tries, but like seriously,
I think there's only like 6, by the way. But yeah,
whatever. They're everywhere. They're coming from different sides. I was like, well, I'll retreat into this, and they were there, and I'll go that way, and they're there, and then you finally get them down, and then when like the clickers and the other guy infected come in, you're like, all right, chance to breathe. But like there was just like the second loss, I was like, are you fucking
gotta
kidding
earn it,
me?
man.
And I'm ready to throw the controller.
It was tense. It was cool. I did enjoy. I like it's kind of a juxtaposition to feeling like maybe there shouldn't have been combat. I did like pitting
them against each other was
the humans,
awesome.
which is cool.
Yeah,
was there
yeah.
a technical reason why that wasn't in the original game, or is that something you guys just played with and you got to later? Or
Yeah, it's really we had plans on getting it into Pittsburgh, and then it really came down to the scope of the game and production, the amount of people, time. You're like, okay, well, we had a sketch in, but the siren's lure of the prototype means like, okay, we think we can do it, and really, when it comes down to it, all of the bugs that are going to like come out of that and all the different ways that this explodes into a can of worms, it's like, all right.
So it was just a completely scripted part. But then as soon as we started Left Behind, we felt like we could do it. We have the time to flesh it out now.
Cool. Yeah, I enjoyed that. And it was so satisfying. Like, and I loved sitting, like throwing a bottle, and these guys are freaking out, and the infected are coming at them. But then you get up, and I like took a few shots at one of the guys, and they knew I was there, but they couldn't really focus on me, and it seemed kind of clever, I thought.
No, when you come out of the air ducts, and that was like the first, because
the training,
I've read about it,
Yeah.
I've heard all about it, and when you come out, you're like, oh, I see how this all pieces together finally. It was great. And then later on, there's the room where you come in, and there's all the infected over here, and then they come, like normal people come in from the front, and they throw them, and that was another one of those moments of like, I threw the bottle, they all started fighting. I'm like, great. One infected came around, I shot at that one, that alerted them. So then eventually, infected were coming at me, and I'm like down to the last bullet, and I shoot one of them, and then I'm just like swinging my knife, and I finally kill them with like nothing left. Like, that was an awesome moment. You know what I mean?
It's
I
nice
really
to actually watch the humans kind of they behave with a little bit of fear. Like they'll actually run from the infected and then hide, and you get that sense of just like, yeah, they're surviving. They're just like me. And then you shoot them with an arrow in the head. You're like, yes, because they don't know that you're there. So then you have that drop on them. So
it was cool. I really did enjoy that. I'm interested to see how other people take to that, because I thought that added like a whole nother dynamic to the combat.
100%.
Because in the campaign you approach the infected in a certain way, and they're fucking scary, and you approach the humans in a different way, like they're maybe a little bit more manageable, right? And now you have to deal with both of them at the same time. You don't know who's coming at you, who knows you're there.
It's kind of tense because as the humans are running away from the infected, you're not sure if they're gonna expose you, and then how to behave. Do I just take them out, or do I like start evading? So it adds this other dimension.
Yeah, and based on like your supplies, you're like, do I take out the humans or do I take out the infected?
Yeah. And so just to address kind of the combat question that you had earlier, is for us that storyline is really showing like Ellie's capabilities, like how far she's grown in the single player campaign. Because if you remember where that's slotting in as far as the single player, then she's really evolved as far as her capabilities, her independence, and now not only emotionally are we showing like the lengths that she'll go to survive and help somebody that she loves, Joel being injured,
the strength,
but it's also what she's gained from being with Joel.
Because like you see the end of the Riley story and how much struggle it is for her to kill one infected,
right?
And then how far she's come, like Bruce was saying at the end of the Joel story.
So was there ever a desire to go further with the story here? Like, when they sit down, they're both bitten, they realize it's over. We already know that they're going to ride it out. I kind of expected it to fade to black and come. I wanted to see the conversation of Riley's like, I'm not doing well, and Ellie's like, I'm all right. I don't know what's happening. Was there any thought of doing something like that?
Not really, because this story was just about that turning point. That where like they express their love to each other and they're just willing to spend those 2 days together, and that's kind of Ellie's turning point. There was actually at one point we had less than that, where you didn't even see the bite happen. You didn't have the whole end chase sequence, and it felt like people were just on the team telling us like it's too subtle. Like I want to see the part where they get bitten, and that's when we actually took another month to do this whole kind of end sequence with the chase. Nice. That you see the bite.
Well, see, that's what was interesting about American Dreams. When I read that, I'm like flipping pages. I'm like, oh, this is really good. I can't wait to see her get bitten. Like, where is this? And then it never happens. And I was like, what the hell? Like that. It was so weird. And that was before, obviously, there was an announcement that the DLC was based on them, and that's how this was going. And so then when the DLC did come out, I thought it was going to be the American Dreams thing a little bit more. So it was different. And I loved the fact that you guys were making callbacks to it, because I'm sure you've seen some of my work here on IGN.com, where I talk about in the Rewind theaters the fact that you can't animate pillows or blankets. And one of the things I call out is the fact that I couldn't wrap my head around them going to the mall when they'd already been to that mall. You know what I mean? The comic book was about them going to the mall, but then you get there and there's they talk about the guy who had died and his saddle and the horse, and it was like, okay, I love to see continuity like that come together, because so many times you read the Uncharted comic and then you see the game, and like granted they're different time periods, and you don't see the connection as obvious as this one was.
Well, there's also continuity between the single player campaign, like the main campaign, because in Billstown, I don't know if you went into the pizza shop and there's the arcade machine.
Right, the turning point's there.
Yeah. So it's the same thing. Now here's actually where she's referring to.
Yeah, that was awesome too.
Yeah, it's very cool. Very cool. Throwback, and I liked, just in a very core way. I love the idea of these two girls that don't know any better. They don't know this real world. They don't know anything, but they're going to the mall together and like doing what normal the girls we would think of today might go to the mall and enjoy each other's company and go shopping and stuff like that. And they're kind of doing it in their own world, and I just love that. Like it's not subtle at all. It's just, it is what it is, and I enjoy. I don't know. I just like that.
Yeah, that's the thing. We talked with Faith about is like what's kind of like our world and what's the metaphor for it in this kind of fucked up world.
Yeah.
And then we're like, wouldn't it be fun to get all this stuff on the stick and like to play it and experience it?
Yeah. It's good stuff.
I wonder too, so you approached this idea of Left Behind as something you guys thought about, something you wrote. You obviously put a lot of hard work into it. Was there anything else that you were thinking about in your mind, as if you maybe had a fork in the road or a few different ideas you wanted to approach with DLC? Was there anything else that you didn't get to touch on that you might have wanted to?
I'm trying to think. We knew like people wanted Ish, like that always comes up over and over again. But there's something. Okay, let's talk about Ish for a little bit. There's something about it. Like I think people now have built him up in their mind so much, and he's different for so many. Like once you like put him on screen, I feel like that would ruin a lot of that.
Yeah, I agree. I'm glad you didn't do Ish. I like that.
I'm not. This story sucked. That's what I wanted.
I like that. It's just it's like a little narrative you don't even have to find, and I like that, and it tells its own story.
Well, that was the same way with, and I'm gonna forget his name now. Sorry, I want Eli, right? Eli, the medic from the chopper, right? Like he has this whole thing of like that there's the story of how he had to kill one of his guys right away, or he followed execution protocols, and then he did it for this guy, and then the girl was trying to help him, and then he killed her, and then he bleeds out obviously in the air ducts. Like I love the fact that you guys hide those kind of narrative threads around there that are totally there if you want to get into them, and if you don't, no big deal.
Yeah, we actually had in the DLC Ryan James is our editor, and also like wrote some of the notes. We had this note that we wrote from Ish that was in the mall. It was actually a really good note, but it just felt like it's too much of a fan service.
Much of a
it's
tip
too
of the hat.
coincidental for this to be here. Let's take it out.
Yeah.
No, that sucks.
Interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah, I'm glad you enforced it. When I came, I beat the game last night. I walked into Colin's bedroom. He was under the covers playing something else, and we went through all this. We went through all this stuff. That's a true story there.
There's a story
That's a
there.
true story.
Is this a metaphor playing?
It's literally 30 minutes before we're having people over for the Super Bowl party, and he's tucked in his bed playing games. But that's beside the point. I walk in and the one thing I asked him was, did he get the social media campaign out of it? And he was like, what, the Facebook sharing? And I'm like, no. Like, when I was in the pharmacy, I looked at the wall, and it's like, follow us on Twitter.
Here we go.
And you go to it, and like, there's another whole little narrative thread you guys hid there.
This is brilliant.
The pharmacy, the ice cream shop, one of the other ones, they all have Twitter accounts going through the fact that they're closed, then a bunch of, BS normal tweets, and then you had the girl and you had the guy who were in the photo, like on the, it was so brilliant. I love that kind of crap.
That was Alex Neonakis, who was our UI designer, and she was doing a lot of the branding for the different stores, and she was like, oh, what if we tweet this stuff? And like, because we had time before Outbreak Day.
Yeah.
What is
September
that?
26th. What are you
October 26th.
No, September.
Is it September?
It's September.
I
I only know because that's where the tweets stop. If you
Yeah.
haven't caught this, ladies and gentlemen, in there you go through and blah blah, and all the tweets are they're real life tweets, so they stop September whatever of last year, of just like we're being closed and this is crazy, we're out of pharmaceuticals, and it's like wow.
So she actually wrote and mapped out all this stuff for the hospital, for the pet store, for the arcade.
The couple
Yeah.
going to the pharmacy.
Right.
Working at
He
the
was the
pharmacy.
pharmacist and his girlfriend who went away, who wrote the note on the back of the photos she left him.
Yeah.
So
that was one
brilliant.
of those genius ideas where we're like, yeah, do
Like,
that.
yeah, that's
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. Last night I tweeted at the pharmacy and I just said, "Y'all need to restock." And I left it up. I left it up for like 15 minutes, and because I was like, no. First off, nobody's. If you're a real big Greg Miller fan, to go through my tweets and find like a weird pharmacy I'm tweeting at. But then I eventually took it down because I was more concerned not of getting you guys mad at me, but I didn't want to ruin for anybody it was happening in Colorado, and so I didn't want somebody to look at it and go, oh, it's clearly a Last of Us thing from Colorado. Did I miss this in the main? Oh, wait, no, it's about that. I didn't want to spoil for people that, the fact you're going to pop up in Colorado.
We appreciate it.
Nope, well, I'm sure there was a lot of refreshing. I'm like, God, tell me nobody on Gaff picked this up. I do not need a Gaff thread about, what does Greg Miller know about The Last of Us?
Yeah.
Did you guys play the Jak X game in the arcade?
I did not
No.
know you could play it.
Oh.
I saw it in the corner. I didn't see it turned on, though.
Oh. Maybe you should walk a little closer to it.
Oh wow! I liked all the Halloween costumes, the Jak Halloween costume, and then the Nathan Drake for Uncharted 2.
Cool.
Yeah, very cool. So one of the things I was hoping you guys can clear up for me, because there was a post on PlayStation Blog not too long ago, and people are asking about future DLC for The Last of Us. And Eric Monticelli, who is one of your community strategists, he said we have nothing planned right now, and a lot of people took that as being definitive that there's nothing more coming, maybe except for multiplayer DLC. Is it safe to assume, or can we confirm that this is it as far as single player DLC for The Last of Us is concerned?
This is it.
This is it.
I mean, we have another multiplayer drop after this, but that's it.
Well, Lucas, your question's been answered. Raul, your question's been answered.
Yeah, I was curious because I was reading what Eric was saying, and I assumed that we could make that assumption, but he didn't say that, and so I wanted to make sure that.
I mean,
that we
for us,
clarified
part of it, we've never done single player DLC. It's something we've wanted to do for a while. Like, we finished Uncharted 1, there were some ideas to do it, it didn't work out. Same thing after Uncharted 2, and now we felt like we had a strong enough story to try it. So we want to see how well it does. We want to see how fans react to it, and then we'll figure out if in the future we'll do something like this again.
It was great for us also. I mean, there's conversations. We don't know where any of this is going, but conversations around the studio about that was kind of a nice schedule. Even though we're all kind of burnt out and we took our time with this, it's a polished experience. We feel good about the quality of the experience we delivered, and so everybody at Naughty Dog can be super proud. We're proud, and whether you guys like it or not, we don't care. But it's one of those things, lesson learned. What does this mean? Because the campaign was a beast. That was a monster. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those discussions, and we're gonna see what happens. We have no clue. We're pretty flexible at Naughty Dog about we have a lot of leeway with Sony. As far as what we think is best. They're always going to have an opinion on something, but we have a lot of freedom. So I don't know. The future's kind of an interesting proposition right now.
Would you do a Last of Us 2?
Would we?
Yeah.
If there's a story, if there's something that we can find that we really like a lot.
It's the same thing with the DLCs. We had the choice to do it or not do it. It was well, let's figure out if it's worth doing. Let's see if we can get passionate about it. And so that's how we would approach Last of Us 2. Is we'll brainstorm, and if there's something we can really latch onto, then yeah, we would do it.
Latch onto something. I want more. I really enjoyed playing it. It's one of those you kind of forget. You know what I mean? Obviously, I was beating the drum for Game of the Year and all that sort of stuff. But to sit down and get back into scouring around for supplies and crafting and falling in love with the mechanics again, that was a lot.
It's
of fun.
a special game. And it was cool to go back to it because we we have to play lots of games. And you guys,
It's so tough, I tell you.
No, well,
we have to play all these games.
We have to move on sometimes, you know what I mean? And The Last of Us was actually a game, and you get to ask Greg, like, I don't play online games, but I played online The Last of Us for like 40-something hours, you know, because I was like so into the formula of playing the game and slinking around, and it was like a game I was unusually good at. I'm not very good at multiplayer shooters, but I was unusually good at
Not very good at games.
No. But it was cool, I agree, to jump back in, and you almost forget how fun it is, you know, like, and how cool it is to explore. And so I agree, I hope you guys are able to revisit this universe as well, because it's something special, and especially when you just put it next to Uncharted, they're so different to each other, and to be able to go back and forth between these series, because obviously Uncharted 4 is something you're doing now.
But then who's going to make that space game?
Oh, the space
Savage.
People are still beating that drum in corners of the internet.
You talked about it. Last of Us 2, maybe if you ever had a story to tell. However, Mikey Thompson has a question here. He says, with the huge success of The Last of Us, haven't you been tempted to port it to PS4? I know I'd rebuy it. That's like the other $1 million question, right? You always get asked about if there's going to be a sequel, and then what's happening with the PlayStation 4. Because the PlayStation 4 is the hotness. I don't know if you guys know this. A lot of people like it.
What is this PlayStation 4 you speak of?
It is a Netflix machine at the moment, but there is stuff coming. Oh, Lord! There's a Patapon, I'm sure. Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah.
Pregnant pause.
It's resources. You know, it just comes down to where do you put your resources.
Again, if we can get something, if it's worth it, we have to kind of. I think Neil nailed it. Like, if we have the opportunity, and we find that there's an audience out there that's craving it, then if we can make it happen, then possibly. But there's nothing definitive right now. As
developers, and as you talk about resources, is this what excites you about PlayStation Now? The fact that games, you wouldn't have to, from what I understand of PlayStation Now, dedicate resources to it, right? They would kind of just take your game and put it in the cloud, and there you go. They're already demoing it. Mm-hmm. Is that exciting to you that, like, oh, cool, we won't have to go back and do busy work, quote unquote, or something like that?
I think that's awesome because, you want to play all these old games, but sometimes due to lack of backwards compatibility or whatever, now you can. Now you can, like, go to all these old games and try them out. And, there's a lot of people that have jumped on PS4 that didn't own a PS3, and now they can play all these awesome games.
Yeah.
Including The Last of Us.
Including The Last of Us one day. PlayStation Now.
Soon.
Yeah. Maybe.
This summer, maybe.
Kind of. Yeah.
In
I'll
North
believe
America.
that when I see it.
Right.
What else you got, Colin?
I kind of want to see what the readers have to say. Actually, I don't want to cannibalize any more of their questions.
Jared Petty writes in. He says, "Would you kill your children to save humanity?" This is the thing. And then in a similar vein, Mathis writes in here, and he says a famous Greg Miller quote, because I have famous quotes now. "We were playing as the bad guy the whole time." That's how I remember. Remember, I finished the game, and I messaged both of you, and I was like, I can't believe Joel was the bad guy. And you're all like, oh, he's not the bad guy. I'm like, no, he's the bad guy, all right?
Was that your Neil impersonation?
Yeah, that's my Neil impersonation. It's pretty good, right? Nailed it, yeah? I'm telling you, you need a voice actor for Uncharted.
It's a lot better than most of your yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like,
I'm in the Joel camp where
what the hell?
I would kill all of you motherfuckers to save my kid.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it either. I wouldn't kill. I'd save the kid.
Yeah.
It's my
Colin,
love.
what would you do?
That's what I felt when we first played the game. Like he made the decision that I think is the logical decision for him to make.
Yeah. Again, it's one of those things. I look at it, and my own interpretation of this thing is like look at the state of the world. Like, even if they could extract a cure, how are they going to like bottle it up and send it out to people? There's no infrastructure for delivery. Like, how does it? Like, the leaps of logic to try to get this thing out there is kind of ridiculous, and that's my spawn. Yeah. That's my brood. That's my child.
I go even further. Let's say it's guaranteed that they could get a cure and guaranteed they could get it out there. I still save my kid.
Sure.
Yeah, and I buy it. And this was one of the major things that I talked about in our spoiler cast, which was I didn't, some people extracted out of this that the Fireflies could definitely get the cure out of her, and I was like, there's no guarantee. In fact, I was reading all this stuff like we were going crazy with it. You're telling me I was an idiot, but I was like, when I was reading all of this stuff in the hospital, being like, it seems like they've been trying to do all this kinds of shit for a while, and Ellie might just be a sacrificial lamb for no reason, and maybe Joel's finding this stuff and seeing it with his own eyes. So maybe like he's just like,
it would have worked.
There's no guarantee.
The note said it would work. It would have worked.
and
greater good.
But I was more fascinated, interestingly, when you were talking about like what is the logistical plan behind getting this cure out in such a post-apocalyptic dystopian situation. I was more excited about if the Fireflies actually control this, like it would create some sort of war with Fedra or like like with the powers that be in some sort of conflict, which could have happened had Ellie been.
It does open up a lot of possibilities. It's kind of intriguing. That's sort of the same thing about the end of the Left Behind storyline is letting it be in the player's imagination of like how did they fall apart? How did that happen after? Like what was the conversation like between Ellie and Riley afterwards?
Yeah, and that's the thing we always try
more
to
interesting.
do with the stories. Never answer all the questions. Leave a lot of it to the player's imagination.
Yeah.
But
We
you're
like
talking about all
stories
these
like that.
different factions and how they would fight over the vaccine. That was actually one of the early versions of the story. Like remember all these people chasing after Ellie and trying to like get the vaccine for themselves.
That was a bad
Interesting.
story.
Yeah, that was you were part of that.
I'm glad we didn't make that game.
Speaking of, Joe the Guru, he says, did you guys think that The Last of Us would be this well received with the dark nature of the game? You're talking about the stories and stuff.
The dark nature.
Dark nature.
No, we would have these conversations where we said, this is much more. This is darker than Uncharted. It's not going to be as mass appeal.
The fans are going to hate us.
It's going to be much more divisive.
We've betrayed
when
them.
reviews come out, like there's going to be a lot of arguments about.
Oh yeah, a lot of controversy as far as like the blurriness of the moral lines that constantly are played with. Throughout the game, and
even as far as like the mechanics, we felt like we went too hardcore. But again, we loved it. So
Yeah, we were making a game that we wanted to play,
Yeah.
both story and gameplay. So we just kind of stuck with our guns with that. Tried to make it as accessible as possible. That's what Naughty Dog. It has to come out of Naughty Dog's doors. That's really it, though. But we like those games. We like Naughty Dog's games. So we just wanted to make a rad action survival action Naughty Dog game. That was our thing.
And I think I'll spoil a little bit of part 5, the last part of the history of Naughty Dog, which I haven't written yet.
Okay.
But I talked to a lot of people.
Good tease.
I talked to a lot of, including you guys. We've talked to a lot of people at the studio, and I know that the game's mock reviews suggested that it was going to be about in the mid 80s, and that your internal I guess metrics for the game in terms of sales were quickly exceeded when the game came to market. So it seems like you guys even, internally were, knew you might have had something good, maybe not. There was some divisiveness there. And then the game seemed to quickly exceed expectations. So that must have been pretty exciting for you guys, both critically and commercially, right? I mean...
Yeah, it was... I think the mock review was good because it just brought us down. And we're like, okay... It's not so much the score that they gave us, it's what they critiqued in that mock review. And they were saying, like, not enough boss fights... not enough variety of weapons, not enough variety of enemies. They didn't even like Ellie that much.
Super niche mechanics in regards to the crafting. Like I want to be able to cut a match into 3 pieces and then reuse this, to make a tent. Or so it's just like crazy stuff that you're like, okay, I don't even know how to make that.
So it just felt like the thing we were going for didn't come across, and that's what we were worried about.
And then there is an audience out there that's like hardcore survival horror, which I can totally see that they would like that stuff too.
Right.
But that's not what we were going for. So with Neil, like we just thought like we missed the mark completely. Like we're trying to sell this survival
This very,
action
like,
experience. We're
and this
creating a
very
new genre,
character-driven
basically.
experience,
Yeah.
and like in that review, that didn't come across.
Yeah. And they were just like, they wanted survival horror. And that was the thing, is the review was also based on their opinion of what they wished it was, rather than critiquing it on what
Sure.
it actually was.
So then when the actual reviews came out, it was like, oh, okay, people are getting it. This is awesome. This is great.
Well, that was the takeaway I had when I went and played it for the first time. You guys finally let us actually get hands-on with it. Is when I came back and would talk about it, I talked about the crafting system, that I loved. It was a crafting system for people who didn't want an in-depth crafting system, right? Like, it's like you can wrap your head around, you look at it and it's all visual, and you have like the pie chart filled in of how much duct tape you have, and you need a little bit more, and it was like, all right, I can go do that. It was a nice, obviously, twist on something that Uncharted never touched on, but was still simple enough that you could just jump in and go with it.
Yeah, I mean, the core things about the crafting system was we wanted to keep it live so that it built the tension. So if you ran away and have like a couple seconds to hunker down, create a Molotov or a health kit, and regain the upper hand, we wanted to keep it live and fast.
Tension.
And then we needed it to be, that meant that it had to be super accessible and super simple. And that's kind of the key to good design, period. We're always just trying for, both in story and gameplay, like how do you simplify these things? Like what's actually necessary to get the tone, the experience across?
What's the least we need to say or do here to get this point
And that's
across?
a mantra for us all the time. Okay, step back. How do we simplify?
Gotcha. Matt Farley wrote in, he said, were you worried about multiplayer, that it might be ill-received? Were you surprised by the positive reaction?
Well, we knew internally that there was the tone, the tension that was right. We worked really hard at trying to capture that survivalist feeling. And so the pacing, that was the hardest thing, is like trying to get the pacing right in it, because it could swing from being too lethal, and then respawns and things kind of had no consequence because you had to get back in the game. So finding the balance with that stuff to keep the tension, but at the same time allow you the accessibility. And then we added the meta system, sort of that the survivalist group and the Facebook integration into it, and then it added this extra veneer of like, okay, this is personalized now. Yeah. Now I can kind of like invest in, I just saw, my mom just died, inside of the metagame. You're like, that's kind of cool. It adds this extra element. It might not have the longevity, but at the same time, that was one of those things that we're like, okay, well, we're good with this for now, and we're super proud of how, there's a core group of fans that really love it. And that's all we want to do, is we want to make sure, we kind of knew from the Uncharted series that people buy these games for the single-player campaign. But there is always a small faction that factions. They like to go online and extend kind of the experience. And I think the experience that we delivered in the multiplayer is like, it's intense. I mean, you get sweaty palms and you're at the edge of your seat. Like, I really like it a lot in the studio. Like, I've had some of those amazing moments where, as I'm running a raid, I pick up a 2x4, I jump in a corner, I craft a bomb, I throw the bomb down, somebody's still running after me, I hear the bomb blow up, I know I'm down one more guy. You're like, yeah. It's amazing. It's a really, I've had some great experiences on it, so I'm glad other people have taken to it.
How long do you guys plan to support it? I mean, servers should be on forever. You're talking about there's more DLC down the way for it.
Yeah, we have our third drop for the, but I mean, yeah, we'll that's really it.
As long as there's people playing it.
Yeah.
As long as there's 2 people playing it.
Those are the intense one-on-one matches.
One-on-one factions.
George wants to know which scene changed the most from script to scene.
We were talking about this morning because we saw that tweet. Probably the one that from dialogue changed the most is where Bill finds Frank's body and it's hanging there, and like the scene was written like the argument between Joel and Bill was kind of lame the way it was on the page, and Troy Baker and W. Earl Brown improvised that whole argument to fight, and the way Tess came into that argument, so that one changed quite a bit and for the better. So that's probably the one.
It's the biggest. And then we talked about the one that just structurally changed, not so much as far as what was being said, was the ending, carrying Ellie out of the hospital.
Right.
That wasn't originally going to be a playable section.
Right, that was a cutscene.
Gotcha. So for the Left Behind DLC here, how great was it not to work with Troy Baker? Just to not have him bumming around the office anymore.
We love Troy.
It was awesome, actually. It was kind of like it was weird. It was weird to like go back on the mocap stage and like Ashley's there, but without Troy, it just had a different energy to it. It was just like different. And she was telling me, she called like Troy. She's like, hey, it was weird not having you around, because she kind of looked up to him because he's like the mocap expert.
Sure.
And now we had Yanni there, and she's now training her like
Yanni King.
Yeah. So yeah, it was different.
Okay. Final question from the fans isn't about The Last of Us. It comes from Emir. He says, what are the chances of Naughty Dog allowing any other studio to make a Jak and Daxter game? You guys already did, didn't you?
Did we? I guess the
Lost Frontier?
Lost Frontier.
What is...
it was a PSP game. It was a PSP game.
Oh, sure. Yes, definitely.
You know the PSP game I worked on?
I get really focused on the games that we're making in-house, so I don't know what happens outside the doors of Naughty Dog.
Okay.
That's kind of my answer, is I have no clue.
We wouldn't be against it if there was a studio we respected that had a good idea. That we would entertain it.
Is it weird?
I'd play a Jak and Daxter game that was well done. That'd be cool. I'm down.
Is it weird? I mean, having these properties that you've massaged, brought to life, done all these things with, and then having like a Sony Ben do an Uncharted Vita game?
Well, I mean, those guys, they worked closely with Amy on that, and it's something that we kind of helped with. So it was a Naughty Dog sanctioned project.
The hardest thing was the Crash Bandicoot.
You guys came with your holy water, threw it all over the game.
Crash Bandicoot was the tough one, because I mean, we made a conscious decision inside of the studio not to continue the Crash franchise as we moved on to the PS2. We wanted to exploit what is next gen at that time, and we were all a little burnt out over Crash, and it was Universal's property as well, so there were licensing sort of deals going on between so it was like we just wanted to do something different. That's how Jak came about. But then seeing what happened to the Crash franchise was like,
the heights it reached without you.
Oh man, and the sales were really great, but as far as like the execution, maybe it's a little different than how we would have done it internally. And it's like your baby, that's like we created that thing, that world, and those characters.
But luckily we got that license back, and now we're like bringing it.
We're working on it right now, actively.
Thank God you guys
For PS
announced
Now.
that.
It's only going to be on PS Now.
You announced it in a postage stamp image sign in the back of a trailer. I was really happy that was how you went big with that announcement.
Well, this brings up an interesting question, about The Last of Us, which is, how would you feel about a studio doing a Last of Us spinoff on Vita, for instance, or something like that? I mean, you wouldn't want to relinquish
Don't
that.
you dare, Colin, say those words. How dare you?
I'm just gonna throw it out.
over.
Flip table, walk out.
It could easily be Riley's story of becoming a Firefly. We have 46. There you go. Last of Us: 46 days. There you go. Done.
Ship it. Write it down, Eric.
It would be hard.
It would be the same thing. Where it's like if we felt like we don't have anything to tell and we've moved on, and someone else came with us with a really cool idea, and we're like, "Wow, that actually would be interesting," and we trust that developer, then that would be the hypothetical scenario where we would be like, yeah, okay, let's talk about it.
Well, Nihilistic was doing really good things on Vita, so maybe they'll come and do a Last of Us game for you.
They are busy now, as Instigate.
I'd almost be more interested, rather than them trying to replicate the core experience from the campaign and those mechanics, etc. I would almost be more interested in hearing somebody's abstract indie idea of The Last of Us, or like some completely different, like mechanics.
Yeah.
Interface, etc. That would almost intrigue me more than somebody trying,
Yeah, and it's likewise, I think if they came up with new characters or a totally different scenario.
The world is rich with possibilities, and you just need smart people to go, okay, this would be rad. I could exploit this. Yeah.
Well, there you go, smart indie developers. Tweet at these guys. People. Send them what you want to do.
If Lucas Pope wanted to make
Lucas Pope, I trust. I trust in Lucas Pope.
You should let Steve Gaynor do it.
Steve Gaynor, I trust.
Yeah, he can just come through and investigate your house. Yeah. Go through the Joel house, see what's happening there, try to piece it all together. Before I get flogged in the comments, you guys have been working on this Last of Us pretty hard, right?
How long now? 4 years? Nonstop?
About 4 years, yeah.
So that's why I didn't ask you about Uncharted PS4, because I doubt you've had much to do with it.
No.
Exactly.
No. There's a lot of promotion going on.
I see it on someone's monitor from far away.
There's awesome stuff on monitors, and I'm like, ooh.
And you're like, finish the DLC! Get out of here! Shoo! They got the broom. Well, all right.
Well, one last question I want to ask.
Yeah.
We kind of talked about it a little bit with, the reception of the game when it came out, and you guys were surprised maybe by the reviews and stuff. How did Game of the Year season treat you guys? Did you, knowing, the game came out in June right before E3, started getting 10s, you knew the game was amongst the year's best. Then you get an extraordinary amount of Game of the Year nominations and, awards. So how did that strike you guys at the studio? And are you guys kind of like rock stars now at Naughty Dog right now because your game just kind of murdered?
That's not how things go at Naughty Dog. It's like every day you have to re-earn everybody's respect.
Do you see these scars? Well, it was actually a bit of a roller coaster ride. The start of the, as you call it, the Game of the Year season is it was rocky. It was the first couple. Machinima went to GTA 5.
I mean, we honestly felt like it was GTA 5's year. Like once all the reviews came out, and it has like 98.
I remember even talking to you. What was it up in PAX, like outside of some bar or something?
Yeah.
And I was expressing my concern, like, man, GTA 5. I don't know if we're just
going
to be overlooked. You're like, don't worry about it, and you hugged me, and I felt really good. It was like,
but he always does that.
You wiped my tears, and I was like, oh, Greggy loves me.
Yeah. Put you under my little umbrella, walked you back to the hotel.
Yeah, no, but there's a lot of, again, it's the same thing. It's like if we walked out like cocky of like, yeah, dude, we own this thing. I don't know. It's good to have self-doubt. It's good to like push ourselves to see like, can we do better? We always feel like we can do better. Actually, I look at the single-player campaign. We've talked about like, are there areas that we could have changed or done something different? Could we do better? And hindsight's 2020. We know that. We're very proud of what we've done. But yeah, it was the Game of the Year thing started rocky, and we thought it was sure going to be GTA 5 all the way.
Yeah, and then
and Gone Home. We thought that was the other thing. Yeah. Gone Home was going to be like the indie darling that was going to thank you, Greggy, for Gone Homing it. Yeah. But we thought for sure like that was going to be the other game. It was either going to be huge AAA, I can do anything I want, open world, oh my god, crazy, or this super delicate, intricate, loving story that Gone Home created. So it's I don't know, but it's amazing.
Yeah,
I don't know how else to say it other than I'm
The
glad
cool-
that the team
yeah.
endured everything that they had to endure with dealing with Neil and I's like craziness and our obsession and our, we're very demanding as far as what we're trying to do, and the team kind of has to roll with that and trust us. But I know that they have doubt. I'm sure of it.
Yeah.
I would have doubt. Like, look at these two jackasses trying to make, and I'm working long hours, et cetera, and what's this all for? And then, well, here's what it's for, is like the entire industry can look at us as like, okay, Naughty Dog still like represents, and we're very proud of what the team was able to contribute, and how we couldn't do this without them, so we're glad that they trust us, and that's really what it's all about, being proud of what comes out of the doors.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah. That was good.
That's a good note to end on.
You set this all up well, Colin.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm glad you did.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's been Podcast Beyond, episode 329. The Last of Us, Left Behind. It's out now. Came out on Valentine's Day.
Aw.
Before you play it, you're like, why is it out on Valentine's Day? Then you find out it's a touching love story that ripped off Gone Home. And you're like, yeah, awesome. Make sure you buy it. Make sure you play it. Make sure you keep coming to IGN.com because Podcast Beyond's all well and good. It posts every Tuesday outside of spoilercasts like this. But what keeps the mics on and the lights working is, in fact, IGN.com. So go
Electricity.
there, read the reviews. Well, electricity is part of it. Yeah, we learned about that in The Last of Us as well. Read the reviews, watch the videos, download the PlayStation 4 app. Then make sure you follow us all on Twitter. IGN is IGN. I'm Game Over Greggy. Colin is No Taxation. Now we're in the weeds. Neil Druckmann is just Neil Druckmann, but is there an underscore in there somewhere?
Underscore between.
There
I
you
wanted
go.
to make it extra long.
Can't add anybody
so
else.
no
in those
characters
So
three.
no
left.
one can ask questions. And then Bruce's.
Bruce_Straley.
What pushed you over the edge? Because I gave you nonstop shit during the preview cycle of Last of Us to get on Twitter.
You know what? There was just one day I saw like Neil, Troy, and Ashley are just having like they're laughing at things between each other. And I'm like, I'm not part of the club. I want to be part of the club. There's a joke going on, and I'm not part of it. So yeah,
Peer pressure.
That was it. Peer pressure.
And now
I wanted
you
to
have
be part of.
Now you have 133 followers. Your clout score is going up by the day. Guys, thank you for joining us.
Thank
Thanks.
you guys. Yeah. It's
Beyond.
fun.
Beyond.
Beyond.
Users lose all sense of reality and enter another world. Remember, do not underestimate the power of PlayStation.